The sound of gunfire tore through the Nevada night like the world was ending. 24 years ago, in the fall of 2004, Marcus Ashford stood alone in the doorway of a corrugated metal building that some people called a clubhouse and others called a fortress. The air smelled of cordite and spilled motor oil. Blood ran down his chest from two holes just below his collarbone, warm and thick, soaking through his leather vest. His hands gripped a 12-gauge shotgun so tightly his knuckles had gone white. Behind him in the smoke-filled interior of the clubhouse, 23 men crawled toward the back exit. Some of them were wounded, some of them were dying. All of them were his brothers, even though he had only known them for 3 days. Marcus was what the club called a nomad. He belonged to no single charter. He rode alone, answering only to the national leadership, moving from town to town like a ghost. He had stopped in this forgotten corner of the Nevada desert only to deliver a message to the Chapter 8 president. He was supposed to stay one night, maybe two, but the cartel had come. They came in 4 black SUVs and 2 pickup trucks armed with automatic weapons in a vendetta that went back years. They wanted the Hells Angels to run their drugs, to open up the highways and the back roads and let poison flow from the border to the cities. The club had refused, so the cartel came to make an example. Marcus could have run. He was a nomad. He owed Chapter 8 nothing. He could have slipped out the back with the others, disappeared into the desert night, and let history unfold without him. But that was not who Marcus Ashford was. He planted his boots in the doorway. He raised the shotgun. And when the cartel soldiers rushed the entrance, he pulled the trigger again and again and again until the chambers clicked empty. Then he grabbed a second gun from the floor, then a third. By the time the assault ended, 7 cartel soldiers lay dead in the dirt. Among them was Warren Dalton Sr., the father of the organization's second in command. His body crumpled near the doorway, eyes still open to the cold desert stars. Marcus took 2 bullets to the chest before the cartel retreated. He collapsed in the doorway, his blood pooling on the concrete threshold. The last thing he remembered before losing consciousness was the sound of motorcycle engines roaring to life, in the distance his brothers escaping into the night because he had given them time. When he woke up 3 days later in a basement clinic with a national officer sitting beside his bed, Marcus learned 2 things. First, all 23 men had survived. Second, he could never go home again. The national president himself had come to the clinic. He sat in a folding chair beside the cot where Marcus lay bandaged and broken, and he stitched a patch onto Marcus's leather vest with his own hands. The patch read, "Nomad Highest Honor Savior of Chapter 8. Then the president told Marcus the hard truth. The cartel had put a bounty on his head. $750,000 for the man who had killed Warren Dalton Sr. Every criminal organization from Vegas to the Mexican border would be hunting him. Marcus could stay with the club, the president said. They would protect him. They would go to war if necessary. But Marcus had just learned he was going to be a father. So he made a choice that no one expected. He took off his colors. He walked away from the only family he had ever known. And he disappeared into the sprawl of middle America, taking nothing with him but the leather jacket and a promise that he would keep his daughter safe no matter the cost. For 20 years, Marcus Ashford worked as a mechanic in Salt Lake City. He fixed transmissions and carburetors and taught his daughter how to use a socket wrench before she learned to ride a bicycle. He made blueberry pancakes on Sunday mornings, always burning the edges. He double-locked the doors every night. He kept the jacket wrapped in plastic in the back of his closet, taking it out only once a year to condition the leather in silence. And he never ever told his daughter the truth. 8 months ago, Marcus Ashford's heart gave out in the middle of the night. The state seized everything. The house went to the bank. The tools went to auction. Social services took Riley and placed her in a group foster home on the north side of Salt Lake City, a loud and chaotic place run by a man with cold eyes and colder hands. But Riley had managed to steal one thing before the social workers arrived. She had taken the jacket. Now in late November of 2024, Riley Ashford sat alone in the corner booth of a roadside diner simply called the Dusty Spoon. The diner squatted like a wounded animal on the shoulder of Highway 50, often called the loneliest road in America. Outside, the Nevada sun was a blinding white disk in a sky so pale it looked bleached. Riley was 17 years old. She was 5'4" and weighed maybe 110 pounds soaking wet. She had her father's hazel eyes and his stubborn jawline. She had not eaten a proper meal in 3 days. She wore her father's jacket. It was enormous on her. The shoulders drooped halfway down her biceps. The sleeves had to be rolled up twice so she could use her hands. The leather was old and distressed, cracked in places, stained with years of road dirt and sweat and what might have been blood. But she would not take it off. She could not. It was the only thing she had left of him. Riley stared out the window at the empty highway, her hands wrapped around a glass of lukewarm tap water. Her stomach growled. She counted the crumpled bills in her jacket pocket for the third time. $4.75. She was 300 miles from Salt Lake City. She had hitchhiked most of the way, catching rides with truckers and traveling salesmen who did not ask too many questions. Her destination was Fresno, California. Her father had a sister there, a woman named Eleanor, who Riley had only met once years ago. Riley pulled the oversized collar of the jacket closer to her face. It still smelled like her father. Motor oil and Old Spice and something else she could not name, something that felt like safety. She remembered the last Sunday they had spent together. Her father had looked at her with those hazel eyes and said, "Family is not always about blood, kiddo. It is about who shows up when you need them." Now sitting alone in a diner in the middle of nowhere, she wondered if he had been trying to tell her something else. The sound shattered the silence like a sledgehammer through glass. It started as a low vibration, a guttural hum that seemed to rise from the earth itself. Riley felt it in the soles of her worn-out sneakers before she heard it. Within seconds, the hum escalated into a deafening, thunderous roar that swallowed the desert landscape whole. A pack of motorcycles roared into the dusty parking lot. There were 15 of them, massive custom-built Harley-Davidsons gleaming with chrome and matte black paint. The riders revved their engines in unison, making the diner's thin glass panes rattle violently. Riley pressed herself against the back of the booth. She pulled her canvas backpack onto the seat beside her, using it to shield the back of her jacket from view. Outside, the engines cut out one by one, leaving a sudden ringing silence in their wake. The riders dismounted. They were large men clad in heavy denim and black leather despite the suffocating heat. And on the backs of their leather vests, their cuts Riley could see the unmistakable insignia, Hell's Angels. Below the winged Death's Head logo, the bottom rocker read Nevada. The heavy glass door of the diner swung open. They filed in, bringing the smell of gasoline, hot asphalt, and sweat with them. They took over the space, completely pushing 4 tables together in the center of the room. Leading the pack was a man who looked like he had been carved from granite. Victor Brennan was in his late 50s. His beard was a thick, untamed tangle of salt and pepper. His arms were the size of tree trunks covered entirely in faded blue-black ink. He had an aura of undeniable authority. Behind Victor followed a younger man, perhaps in his late 20s, Garrett Holloway. He had slicked back blonde hair, a jagged scar across his chin, and an arrogant, restless energy. His cut was newer than the others. He moved with a hyperactive swagger. Beside him sat Wyatt Brennan, Victor's younger brother, a heavy-set man with a bandana tied around his head. Next to Wyatt was Silas, a lanky man with an eye patch and the weathered look of someone who had seen too many fights. When Garrett's gaze landed on Riley, it stopped. She kept her eyes downcast. Just be invisible, she thought. For the first 10 minutes, her strategy worked. The bikers were loud, their booming laughter filling the diner. But Garrett was bored. He spotted Riley. More specifically, he spotted the jacket. Garrett let out a sharp, derisive snort. He nudged Wyatt. "Hey, check out the tough guy in the corner." Wyatt turned his massive head. A slow, cruel grin spread across his face. "Looks like we got a runaway playing dress-up." Riley heard them. Her stomach plummeted. "Hey, kid," Garrett called out. Riley did not move. "I'm talking to you, little girl," Garrett said, his voice dropping to a sharper edge. "You deaf?" Victor glanced over, his dark eyes narrowing slightly. He did not intervene. He simply watched. Garrett stood up. "I just want to know where a little girl like that gets a jacket 3 sizes too big. Looks like she stole it off a corpse." The words hit Riley like a physical blow. Garrett stopped right at the edge of her booth. "I asked you a question, sweetheart. Where did you get the leather?" Riley finally looked up. Her eyes met Garrett's cold blue stare. "It belonged to my father," she said quietly. "Leave me alone." Garrett threw his head back and laughed. "Her daddy. Oh, is not that sweet? Let me see this thing." He reached across the table, aiming to grab the lapel of the jacket. Riley reacted on instinct. She jerked backward. "Do not touch me," she snapped. The diner fell dead silent. Garrett's smile vanished. "You got a smart mouth for a little girl wearing a stolen jacket. Take it off." "No." "I said take the jacket off." Garrett repeated, blocking her exit. "You have not earned the right to wear road-worn leather." "Garrett." The voice came from the main table. Victor had not moved from his seat, but his eyes were locked on to the younger biker. "She's a disrespectful little brat," Garrett shot back, "wearing colors she has not earned." "I did not steal it," Riley yelled. "It was my dad's. He died, then he will not be needing it." Garrett sneered, lunging forward. His heavy hand clamped down hard on the oversized shoulder of the leather jacket. Riley panicked. She swung her canvas backpack up from the floor, hitting Garrett squarely in the knee. He stumbled backward. Taking advantage of the distraction, Riley grabbed her backpack and scrambled out of the booth. "You little bitch," Garrett snarled. He reached for her arm as she bolted past him. His fingers caught the jacket sleeve, yanking her back violently. Riley twisted to pull away. Her backpack tumbled to the floor, and her back was completely exposed to the bright fluorescent lights of the diner. But the attack she expected never came. Instead, a deafening, suffocating silence fell over the room. Garrett was frozen. The color had drained completely from his face. He was not looking at her face. His eyes were glued to the back of her jacket. Riley slowly reached back, pulling the jacket properly onto her shoulders. Sewn into the heavy, distressed leather of the back panel, right between the shoulder blades, was a patch. It was old, custom-made. The fabric was frayed at the edges, stained with years of road dirt and what looked unmistakably like dried blood. The patch bore a skull wearing a cracked military helmet pierced by a single dagger, dripping red. Above the skull, stitched in faded blood-red thread, were the words, "In memory of ironclad Marcus." But it was the smaller rocker patch beneath it that held the room captive. It read Nomad, Highest Honor, Savior of Chapter 8. Every man at the central table had stopped moving. Wyatt's mouth hung slightly open. Silas leaned forward, his one good eye wide. Victor slowly pushed his chair back. The scraping of the metal legs against the linoleum sounded like a gunshot in the quiet diner. He stood up to his full, towering height. His dark, intense eyes were locked onto the back of Riley's jacket. He walked toward her. His footsteps were heavy, deliberate. Garrett immediately took 2 steps back, lowering his head. Riley stood frozen, her hands clutching the front lapels of the jacket. She watched the massive leader approach, her breath catching in her throat. Victor stopped 2 feet away from her. He looked from her terrified face to the oversized shoulders of the jacket. Then he slowly stepped around her to look at her back again. He stared at the faded red thread for a long moment. "Ironclad Marcus," Victor whispered. It was not a question. It was a statement of reverence. He slowly turned his massive head to look at Garrett. "Do you know what you just put your hands on, boy?" Victor's voice was deathly quiet. "I did not know, boss." Garrett stammered. "I swear I did not see the rocker." "You put your hands on the daughter of Marcus Ashford." Victor continued. "You tried to strip the hide off the back of the man who took 2 bullets to the chest so that the Nevada charter could exist today. A collective gasp seemed to ripple through the seated bikers. They all stood up in unison out of pure respect. Riley stared up at the giant man, her mind reeling. Victor turned his attention back to Riley. The hard, intimidating mask melted away. It was replaced by a look of profound, heavy sorrow. "Little girl," Victor said, his voice softening. "What is your name, Riley?" she whispered. Victor slowly reached out a massive, calloused hand. Riley flinched, expecting him to grab the jacket. Instead, he gently brushed a bit of desert dust off the collar of the leather. "Your daddy was a legend," Victor said, looking directly into her eyes. "And this jacket is royalty." Victor turned back to Garrett, his voice dropping an octave. "You do not put your hands on a citizen, but you put your hands on the bloodline of Marcus Ashford, a nomad who bought your right to wear that patch with his own ribs." Victor pointed a thick finger at the floor. "Cut. Now." Garrett swallowed hard. With shaking hands, he reached up and unbuttoned his leather vest. His cut. He slid it off his shoulders and let it drop to the dusty linoleum floor. "Go wait by the bikes," Victor ordered. Garrett nodded quickly and practically scrambled out the front door. Victor turned back to Riley. The menacing aura melted away, leaving a tired, deeply nostalgic older man. He slid into the booth opposite her. He gestured for Wyatt to pick up Riley's drop backpack. Wyatt did so, placing it gently on the seat beside her. "Sit down, sweetheart," Victor said softly. Riley, her legs shaking, slowly slid back into the booth. "Brenda," Victor called out, "bring this girl a cheeseburger, the biggest one you have got. Fries, onion rings, and a chocolate shake. Put it on the club's tab." As the waitress scurried into the kitchen, Victor leaned forward, studying Riley's face. "You have his eyes," he murmured. "Marcus never talked much about having a kid. He dropped off the map 18 years ago. We thought he was dead." Riley swallowed. "He died 8 months ago. Heart failure. We were living in Salt Lake." A shadow crossed Victor's face. He bowed his head. Several bikers removed their bandanas or bowed their heads in silent respect. "Your daddy did not get those scars in a hunting accident, Riley," Victor said. 20 years ago, a cartel out of Vegas tried to push into our territory. They wanted us to run their poison. We refused. They ambushed Chapter 8 at a clubhouse in the desert. We were outnumbered 3-1. Victor pointed at the patch on her back. Marcus was a nomad. He did not even belong to our chapter, but he was passing through when the shooting started. He did not run. He held the front door alone with a 12 gauge while we got our wounded out the back. He took 2 rounds to the chest. Victor's voice grew quieter. We patched him up in a basement clinic. The national president gave him that highest honor rocker while he was still bleeding on the table. 23 men walked out alive because your father stood in a doorway and refused to move. Riley felt a tear roll down her cheek. "Why did he hide?" Riley asked. "Why did he never tell me?" Victor sighed. "Because the cartel never forgot who held that door. The man Marcus killed that night, Warren Dalton Sr., he was the father of the organization's second in command. There was a bounty on ironclad Marcus's head, $750,000. He did not drop off the map because he stopped loving the Brotherhood, Riley. He vanished because he fell in love, had a little girl, and knew that as long as he wore that patch, a target was painted on her back. He gave up his entire life to keep you safe." The food arrived. For the first time in 3 days, Riley ate ravenously. As she finished her milkshake, Victor watched her. "So, Marcus is gone. Where is your mother? She passed when I was a baby. It was just me and Dad. And what brings you to a diner on Highway 50 with everything you own in a canvas bag?" Riley hesitated. "When Dad died, the medical bills were bad. The bank took the house. The state put me in a foster home. The guy running it, he was not a good person. I waited until I turned 17 and ran. I am trying to get to Fresno. My dad had a sister there. Aunt Eleanor." Victor exchanged a look with Wyatt. "Salt Lake to Fresno is 800 miles, kid," Wyatt said gently. "Hitchhiking that route is not safe. I do not have a choice. Riley said. I only have $4. Victor slammed his hand flat on the table. Marcus Ashford bled into the dirt so I could sit here today and breathe air. He spent his last years turning wrenches and struggling to pay medical bills while we rode free. We failed a brother. We did not know, but we failed him. He stood up looking at the men. The Nevada Charter owes a blood debt to ironclad Marcus, and that debt transfers to his bloodline. This girl is club business now. A chorus of murmurs echoed through the room. Wyatt, get on the phone to the Fresno chapter. Tell them to locate Eleanor Ashford. Make sure she is legitimate. Make sure the house is safe. Victor turned back to Riley. You are not hitchhiking another inch. The Hells Angels are escorting you to California. Before Riley could respond, the flashing red and blue lights of a police cruiser cut through the window. Two county sheriffs pulled into the parking lot. Panic flared in Riley's chest. They are looking for me, she whispered. I ran away. I am a ward of the state. If they run my name, they will send me back. Victor's eyes narrowed. Wyatt, keep her out of sight. Put her in the back hallway. As Wyatt ushered Riley into the shadowy corridor, Victor walked to the front door. He pushed it open and stepped out, blocking the entrance with his massive frame. Afternoon, officers, Victor rumbled. Something we can help you with from her hiding spot. Riley watched, just checking in Brennan. The older deputy stopped at the steps. You boys just passing through, just getting some lunch. We will be wheels up in 10 minutes. The younger deputy peered around Victor. We got a BOLO this morning out of Utah. Runaway teenager, girl 17, brown hair. You boys have not seen any kids hitchhiking, have you? Victor did not flinch. We mind our own business on the road. Have not seen a single hitchhiker all day. The tension was palpable. Finally, the older deputy nodded. 10 minutes, Brennan. You got it. Victor stepped back inside. He looked toward the hallway and gave a curt nod. All right, boys, saddle up. We are riding to California and we have got precious cargo. Stepping out into the blazing Nevada sun, Riley was flanked by 15 of the most dangerous men in the country who treated her with reverence. Garrett stood by his bike at the far edge of the lot, his cut absent, looking miserable. You ride with me, Victor said, walking toward a massive Harley-Davidson Electra Glide painted deep metallic black. I have never been on a motorcycle, Riley admitted. Victor chuckled. He pulled out a matte black helmet. First time for everything. Put this on. You sit behind me, keep your feet on the pegs, and hold onto my belt. You lean when I lean. Understand. Riley nodded, slipping the helmet over her head. She climbed onto the bike, wrapping her arms around Victor's thick waist. Start them up, Victor roared. 15 V-twin engines roared to life simultaneously, vibrating through Riley's boots and rattling her teeth. Victor kicked his bike into gear, and the convoy moved out, merging onto Highway 50 in a tight V formation. Riding on the highway was unlike anything Riley had ever experienced. The wind whipped past her, the landscape blurred. She felt a terrifying, exhilarating sense of freedom. For the first time since her father died, she felt safe. They rode for hours. The Nevada desert gave way to the foothills of the Sierra Nevada mountains. The temperature dropped as they climbed higher. When they stopped for gas near the California border, Wyatt brought Riley cold water and jerky. You holding up okay, kid? I am okay, thank you. Do not thank us. Wyatt tapped her jacket. Your old man paid for this ride a long time ago. But as they prepared to mount up, a sleek, blacked-out SUV pulled slowly past the station. The windows were heavily tinted, but it slowed as it passed, as if someone inside was studying them. Victor stiffened. Did you see the plates? Victor asked Silas, the lanky enforcer with an eye patch. Nevada plates, Silas replied. Looked like a rental. They were looking hard, boss. Victor turned to Riley specifically at the back of her jacket. He had ordered her to wear her backpack over it, but she had taken it off. The ironclad Marcus patch was fully visible. Marcus had a bounty on his head. Victor muttered, 750 grand buys a long memory. You think it is them? Silas asked. I do not believe in coincidences. Victor pulled a canvas-wrapped bundle from his saddlebag. Change of formation. Wyatt, you and Doc take the rear. Silas, you take point. Keep it tight. If that SUV comes back, nobody fires unless I do. But if they try to get to the girl, you put them in the dirt. Riley felt the atmosphere shift. The carefree thrill vanished, replaced by cold tension. Is something wrong? Riley asked. Victor looked back. Just a bump in the road, sweetheart. Hold on tight. They pulled out banking hard onto a narrower route that snaked into the Sierra Nevadas. Riley noticed the bikers riding closer together, constantly checking mirrors, scanning tree lines. The shadow of ironclad Marcus had saved her at the diner. But as the sun dipped behind the mountains, Riley realized that wearing her father's legendary jacket might have just painted a target on her back. The temperature dropped rapidly as they climbed higher. The blinding desert glare was replaced by dense shadows of towering pines. The twisting asphalt was treacherous. Victor turned his head. Hey, kid. Wyatt ran that name. Eleanor Ashford Fresno came up clean. She still lives there. Riley let out a breath. Thank you. But relief evaporated instantly. From the rear, Wyatt laid on his horn. 3 short blasts, immediate danger. Riley twisted around. Emerging from the shadows, 3 vehicles were rapidly closing. The blacked-out SUV flanked by 2 reinforced pickup trucks, moving at reckless speed. Hold on tight, Riley. Victor roared. He kicked down and rolled the throttle. The bike surged forward with terrifying torque. The cartel had found them. The Hells Angels reacted with deadly precision. Silas swerved into the oncoming lane. The pack formed a defensive wall behind Victor and Riley. The lead pickup accelerated. Its steel bumper slammed into a younger biker's rear tire. Sparks showered across asphalt as the rider fought to stay upright. Gunfire shattered the roar of engines. A bullet sparked off Wyatt's exhaust pipe. Evasive. Victor bellowed. The formation split. Silas and another biker dropped back, flanking the pickup. Silas pulled a heavy steel chain and swung it viciously. The chain shattered the truck's windshield. Blinded, the driver swerved hard into the mountain wall. The truck crumpled with a deafening crunch, flipping and sliding in sparks and glass. But the SUV and second truck did not slow. They navigated around the wreckage, closing in. Riley buried her face in Victor's leather, terrified. The mountain road was turning into a battlefield. The chase descended into chaos. The road narrowed. Sheer rock face on the right, deadly ravine on the left. The cartel truck pushed aggressively. Bullets continued flying. We cannot outrun them, Silas shouted. They have got too much armor. Victor's eyes darted ahead. There is an old logging camp 2 miles up. We bottleneck them there. The convoy leaned into a knee-scraping turn, bikes sparking. A heavily rutted dirt road appeared. Victor did not brake. He downshifted hard and wrenched his handlebars, sliding sideways into dirt. The club followed a thunderous stampede, plunging into dense forest. The cartel vehicles overshot tires, screaming as they reversed. Victor halted in the center of an abandoned logging camp. Rusted machinery, stacked timber, perfect defensive perimeter. Dismount, cover. Victor roared. Riley scrambled off, legs trembling. Wyatt grabbed her jacket and threw her behind a massive bulldozer. Keep your head down, do not move. The Hells Angels fell into tactical positions. Canvas bundles appeared from saddlebags. Within seconds, they were heavily armed. The SUV and truck tore into the clearing, high beams blinding. Cartel mercenaries poured out, heavily armed, tactical vests. The firefight was deafening. Wood splintered, metal shrieked, cordite overpowered pine scent. Riley curled into a ball, hands over ears. The jacket smelled of motor oil and her father. Give us the jacket and the girl, a voice over a megaphone. The bounty is on the bloodline. Walk away, Brennan. Victor reloaded, face twisted in fury. She is a citizen of the Nevada Charter. You want her, you go through every patch here. The cartel outgunned them. Automatic weapons pinned the bikers down. Suddenly, a solitary screaming engine echoed. Through the trees, Riley saw him. Garrett. He had been ordered to ride miles behind in disgrace. No cut, no armor, just a white t-shirt and determination. Garrett did not slow as he hit the dirt road. He accelerated. Garrett, no. Wyatt screamed. Garrett ignored him. He locked eyes on the SUV, stood up on foot pegs. At 50 miles per hour yards from the SUV, Garrett violently kicked his bike sideways and threw himself off. He hit dirt hard, rolling tearing clothes and skin. His riderless motorcycle became a 500-pound missile. It slammed into the SUV with catastrophic force. The gas tank detonated in a massive fireball. The explosion threw mercenaries to the ground. Shattered windows, destroyed cover. Now, Victor bellowed. The Hells Angels surged forward. The explosion turned the tide. With cover gone and leader disoriented, the cartel panicked. They dropped weapons and scattered into dark woods. Silence fell broken only by crackling fire and groans. Victor walked out, weapon lowered. He scanned the tree line. Then he turned to the dirt. Garrett struggled to his knees, face bloody arm hanging wrong. He coughed dust and blood. Victor walked over, looked down. For a long moment, only crackling fire. "You lost your bike," Victor said, voice low. "I bought it with my own money." Garrett wheezed, figured I could wreck it if I wanted. Victor pulled out the cut he had stripped earlier, tossed it into dirt at Garrett's feet. "A man who bleeds for the club does not ride in a white t-shirt. Patch up your arm. We ride for Fresno in 10. Riley stood up from behind the bulldozer, hard hammering. She looked at the wreckage, at the bleeding men who had risked everything. She gripped her father's jacket. It was no longer just clothing. It was testament to the brotherhood her father had bled for, a brotherhood that had just bled for her. The aftermath left the convoy running on fumes and adrenaline. Garrett rode pillion on Wyatt's bike arms splinted with duct tape and wrench. He was pale, but his eyes held new dignity. Silas limped bandage soaked through. Yet despite smoke, blood, and damaged machines, the atmosphere was fiercely victorious. They had stared down a cartel hit squad, protected a citizen, defended a legend's legacy. As they descended from the mountain pass, the sun broke over the horizon. Golden dawn cast warm light over the California valley. Freezing mountain air gave way to damp earth, orange blossoms, diesel fumes. To Riley shivering behind Victor, the sunrise felt like a curtain falling on the longest nightmare. By the time they crossed Fresno city limits, morning traffic was thickening. The roaring engines turned heads as they navigated urban streets. Riley rested her helmet against Victor's back. The jacket was stiff with dust and gunpowder. "All right, Riley," Victor called back. "Wyatt got confirmation. We verified Eleanor Ashford's address. We are heading there now." Miles later, the convoy banked onto a quiet suburban street. Mature oak trees, manicured lawns, modest single-story homes, except for one staggering anomaly. Lining both sides of the street, parked perfectly tire to tire for an entire block, were at least 60 custom Harley-Davidsons. Standing shoulder to shoulder beside them were the heavily patched members of the Fresno Hells Angels charter. They formed a massive guard of honor, absolute unified silence as Victor's battered convoy rolled slowly down the center. Neighbors peeked nervously through blinds, terrified by the army that had claimed their street. But the bikers ignored them, eyes locked on the black Electra Glide leading the pack. At the cul-de-sac's end stood a small yellow house with white trim. On the porch, a woman in her late 50s. Simple knitted cardigan over floral blouse, hands trembling as she pressed tissue to mouth. Even from distance, Riley could see it. The same crooked nose, the same jawline, the exact same hazel eyes as Marcus. Victor cut his engine. The convoy followed, thunderous roar replaced by sudden silence of ticking exhaust and cooling metal. Riley unstrapped her helmet with shaking hands, swung her leg over. Boots hit pavement, but knees felt like water. She looked at the impenetrable wall of leather-clad men. Then at the woman on the porch, Eleanor slowly walked down the steps, eyes brimming with tears. Riley, she whispered, voice carrying fragile, disbelieving hope. Riley choked back a sob, took one step, then another, then broke into a run. And Eleanor. They collided on the walkway. Eleanor wrapped arms fiercely around the teenager, burying a face in the dusty, oversized shoulder of Marcus's jacket. "Oh, my sweet girl." Eleanor wept, stroking Riley's hair. "You look so much like him. I thought I lost you both." Riley hugged her aunt tighter than she had ever hugged anyone, letting exhaustion, terror of past 4 days, and grief pour out. She was safe. The cartel was decimated. The foster system would never trace a ghost to a house protected by this army. "When these men arrived at my door at dawn," Eleanor said, pulling back to look at Riley's face, "I was terrified. But the president sat at my kitchen table and told me everything. What Marcus did, what you did, what they did." She looked past Riley to Victor, who had dismounted and was walking up the driveway. Victor removed his sunglasses, stopped a respectful distance away. "Ma'am," Victor addressed Eleanor, gravelly voice gentle. "Your brother saved my life and the life of my entire club 20 years ago. We owed him a debt we could never repay while he was breathing. But we consider the ledger balanced today." He turned to Riley, who pulled back to wipe her eyes with the jacket sleeve. "Riley," Victor said, gesturing to the patched men lining the street, "your father was a nomad. In our world, that means he belonged to no single city, but to the entire nation, which means his family is every chapter on every coast. You are never going to be alone again. Nobody is ever going to touch you. If the cartel so much as breathes your name, they will have to go through 1,000 patched members coast to coast." Wyatt limped forward, carrying a large garment bag. He unzipped it and pulled out a brand new, perfectly tailored black leather biker jacket. Pristine. Soft, thick cowhide, untouched by road dirt or violence. "Your dad's jacket is a legendary piece of our history," Victor said softly, reaching out to touch the frayed, blood-stained patch on Riley's back. "But it is too heavy for a 17-year-old girl to carry every day. That jacket belongs in a glass case on your wall. Keep his legacy safe and let it remind you of how much he loved you. But this one," he nodded to the jacket Wyatt held, "this one is yours." Riley looked at the pristine leather, overwhelmed. She slowly unzipped Marcus's heavy, battered jacket, feeling profound closure as it slipped off her shoulders. She handed it carefully to Wyatt, who received it with both hands, treating it with reverence of a folded flag. Riley turned and slipped her arms into the new leather. It fit perfectly, hugging her shoulders like a warm embrace. She zipped it up, feeling the fresh, unbroken material. She looked at Victor, at Wyatt, at Garrett leaning against a bike with arm and sling, at the dozens of men who had ridden through fire to bring her home. She was not a runaway anymore. She was the daughter of ironclad Marcus, and she was exactly where she belonged. But before Victor could say more, a sleek black sedan pulled slowly onto the street. Not a police cruiser, not a cartel vehicle, a Lincoln Town car, pristine and polished, moving with deliberate authority. The Fresno biker stiffened. Hands drifted toward concealed weapons. Victor held up a massive hand. "Stand down. Let us see what this is." The Lincoln stopped 20 yards from Milaner's driveway. The driver's door opened. A man stepped out. Early 50s, tall and lean, with silver hair, slicked back, and a sharp, tailored suit. His face was weathered but handsome, with hard lines and eyes that had seen too much violence. Riley recognized the look immediately. This was a man who had lived in the same world her father had. Warren Dalton. The cartel boss did not draw a weapon. He simply stood beside the car, hands visible, and called out in a calm, clear voice, "Victor Brennan, I am not here to fight. I am here to talk to the girl." Victor's jaw tightened. His hand moved to his belt. "Absolutely not." Warren held up both hands, showing they were empty. "I give you my word. No weapons, no bloodshed, just conversation. 5 minutes. Public place. Witnesses everywhere." He gestured to the street, to the 60 bikers, to the neighbors watching from windows. You think I am stupid enough to start a war in broad daylight on a residential street with this many witnesses? I came alone, Brennan. That should tell you something. Victor turned to look at Riley. Do not even think about it, kid. But Riley was staring at Warren Dalton. She was thinking about the logging camp, the bullets, the fire, Garrett's broken arm, the blood her father had spilled 20 years ago to protect people he barely knew. And she was thinking about the choice her father had made. He could have stayed with the club. He could have kept fighting, but he chose peace. He chose her. Riley stepped forward. I will talk to him. Riley, no. Eleanor gasped, grabbing her arm. Victor stepped in front of her, blocking her path. That man's father died because of your dad. He has spent 20 years hunting that jacket. You do not owe him a conversation. Riley looked up at the massive president. My father spent 20 years hiding because of him. She said quietly, if I do not face him now, I will spend the rest of my life hiding too. Victor searched her face. He saw Marcus's eyes staring back at him. The same stubborn courage, the same unshakable resolve. He stepped aside. Public place. I am coming with you. And if he so much as twitches wrong, this conversation ends with him in the dirt. 10 minutes later, Riley sat across from Warren Dalton in a small corner diner 3 blocks from Eleanor's house. Rosie's Kitchen. Humble place with checkered tablecloths and the smell of coffee and bacon grease. Victor sat at the counter, his back to them, but eyes watching every move in the reflection of the chrome napkin dispenser. Wyatt stood outside by the door, arms crossed. Warren Dalton ordered a cup of black coffee. He did not touch it. Riley ordered nothing. She sat with her hands folded on the table, her new leather jacket still stiff and unfamiliar on her shoulders. Warren studied her face for a long moment. You look like him, he said finally. Same eyes. He had a way of looking at you like he could see straight through to your soul, like he knew every lie you had ever told. Riley did not respond. Warren leaned back in his chair. Your father killed mine. He said it plainly without anger, just stating a fact. September 23rd, 2004, Nevada desert. Your father was holding a doorway with a shotgun. My father was trying to get through it. Marcus Ashford put 2 rounds in his chest. I was 12 years old. I watched it happen from the back of a truck. Riley's breath caught in her throat. Warren continued, for 20 years I've been hunting that jacket, not because I wanted revenge, though I told myself that was the reason, but because as long as that patch existed, as long as ironclad Marcus was a legend, my father's death meant nothing. He was just another body in the dirt. Warren finally looked directly at her. I want you to give me that jacket, the old one, the one with his patch. I want to burn it, right here, right now, in front of you. And then we are even. You walk away. I walk away. The debt is paid. Riley felt her pulse pounding in her ears. Victor's reflection in the chrome shifted slightly. He was ready to move, but Riley did not need him to. She leaned forward, her voice steady. You cannot take legacy by burning leather, Mr. Dalton. My father earned that patch in blood. He stood in a doorway and saved 23 lives. Your father was trying to kill innocent people. There is a difference. Warren's eyes hardened. My father was doing his job. Riley shook her head. Your father was a killer. My father was a protector. That is why his name is still spoken with respect and yours is spoken with fear. Warren's jaw clenched. You are just a kid. You do not understand how this world works. I understand enough, Riley said. I understand that you have spent 20 years chasing a ghost because you cannot accept that your father lost, that he died doing something wrong. Her voice softened. But I also understand that you were 12, that you watched your father die, and that pain does not go away just because time passes. She took a breath. So here is my offer. You can burn my father's jacket and every charter in America will hunt you for the rest of your life. Or you can walk away And I give you my word, the Ashford bloodline ends the vendetta. No revenge, no retaliation. Peace. Warren stared at her. Why would you offer me peace? Riley met his gaze. Because my father could have killed you that night. You were 12. You were in that truck. He saw you, and he let you run. Warren froze. How do you know that? Because that is who he was, Riley said. He did not kill kids. He did not kill people who were not fighting. He had mercy. And if I want to honor his legacy, I have to have mercy too. Silence filled the diner. Victor watched the reflection, his hands still near his belt. Warren Dalton sat back in his chair, his face unreadable. Then he did something Riley did not expect. He laughed. It was not cruel. It was weary. The laugh of a man who had carried a burden for too long. You are right, Warren said. He did let me run. I was hiding behind the truck and he looked right at me. Nodded, like he was saying, get out of here, kid. This is not your fight. I never forgot that. He stood up, pulling his wallet from his jacket. He threw a $20 bill on the table. Your father was a better man than mine, and you are braver than I was at your age. Warren looked at Victor's reflection in the chrome. Tell your president the vendetta is over. The bounty is lifted. The girl is off limits. He walked toward the door, then paused. Your father spared my life once. You just spared it again. That is a debt I cannot repay, but I will not forget it. And then he was gone. The door chimed as it closed behind him. Victor stood up from the counter and walked over to Riley's booth. He slid into the seat Warren had just vacated. Kid, he said, shaking his head in disbelief, you just ended a 20-year war with a conversation. Riley looked down at her hands. I do not want to be at war for the rest of my life. Victor reached across the table and gently tapped the back of her new jacket. Your father would be so damn proud. 3 days later, Riley stood in the Fresno clubhouse. It was a large industrial building on the outskirts of town. Inside, it smelled of motor oil, leather, and decades of history. The walls were covered with photographs, patches, memorabilia from runs and rallies that stretched back 50 years. In the center of the main room, mounted on the wall, in a custom-built glass case with a spotlight shining down on it, was Marcus Ashford's jacket. The blood-stained patch was clearly visible. The frayed edges, the faded red thread. In memory of ironclad Marcus, nomad, highest honor, savior of Chapter 8, Riley stood in front of it, her hands in the pockets of her new jacket. Eleanor stood beside her, one arm around her niece's shoulders. Victor walked up behind them. He is home now, Victor said quietly, where he belongs. Riley nodded, unable to speak. Victor gently placed a hand on her shoulder. You have got school to finish, kid. Eleanor is going to make sure you graduate. But when you turn 18, if you want to prospect, the Nevada Charter will sponsor you. First female nomad in club history. Riley turned to look at him, her eyes wide. You would do that? Victor smiled, the first real smile she had seen from him. Your father earned it. You proved you deserve it. The vote is already in. Unanimous. Riley looked back at the jacket in the glass case. She thought about her father, the quiet mechanic, the man who made burnt pancakes and taught her how to change a spark plug, the man who gave up everything to keep her safe. She thought about the choice he made, and she thought about the choice she had just made. Not violence, not revenge, mercy. Riley took a deep breath and turned away from the case. She walked toward the door, Eleanor beside her, Victor following. Outside, the California sun was warm and bright. 60 motorcycles lined the street, their chrome gleaming, their engines silent, waiting. Riley looked at them, at the men who had bled for her, at the family she had found in the most unexpected place. She smiled. For the first time in 8 months, she felt like she could breathe. Strength is not about fighting, her father's voice echoed in her memory. It is about choosing who to fight for. Riley had made her choice. She chose family. 1 year later, Riley Ashford walked into the Nevada Charter Clubhouse wearing a leather vest with a single patch sewn onto the back. It read Prospect. She was 18 years old, high school graduate, a future ahead of her, but also a past behind her, a legacy forged in blood and sacrifice. She was ready to earn it, not because it was expected, but because it was who she was. The daughter of ironclad Marcus, the girl who ended a war with mercy, the youngest prospect in Hell's Angels history, and the future of a brotherhood that her father had saved with his own life. Riley Ashford was home.